There are ideas people carry in their heads that seem untouchable, ideas that feel sacred simply because they've been repeated long enough. And in the case of Hinduism, many of these beliefs are not just questionable, they are outright foolish when viewed in the light of reason. One of the most obvious examples is the belief that cows are holy animals. In practice, this turns into treating cows as sacred beings, while at the same time millions of people in India suffer from hunger and malnutrition. The contradiction is striking. On one hand, the country struggles with food shortages. On the other, an animal that could provide protein and nutrition is turned into an untouchable symbol of purity. Even worse, this belief has fueled violence, where people have been attacked or even killed in the name of protecting cows. When reverence for an animal creates real human suffering, the logic of the belief collapses. Another strange idea is the obsession with astrology, the notion that the position of planets at the moment of your birth somehow determines your character, your fortune, or your future marriage. It's a belief that has no grounding in science. The positions of stars and planets have no measurable effect on individual lives. Yet astrology is a billion-dollar industry, shaping marriages, business deals, and even political decisions. Countless families delay weddings or cancel them entirely based on whether a priest claims the stars are aligned. The result is stress, broken relationships, and lives shaped not by choice, but by superstition. There's also the belief in reincarnation, the idea that the soul is reborn again and again, in different bodies depending on karma. On the surface, it might sound appealing because it suggests some form of continuity, but it also creates an endless loop of guilt and fear. If something goes wrong in your life, you're told it's your fault from a past life. This removes responsibility from unjust systems, corruption, or inequality, and shifts it onto invisible cosmic punishment. It's not only unfalsifiable, but it also encourages people to accept suffering instead of fighting it. Linked to this is the caste system, which historically has been justified through Hindu belief. The idea that people are born into a certain caste because of past karma and must live out their role without questioning it. This is not only irrational, but deeply damaging. It has divided communities, justified inequality, and left millions trapped in cycles of poverty and exclusion. Belief in divine order has been used as a shield for oppression, and despite modernization, these caste ideas still linger, shaping marriages, careers, and even friendships. Another belief is the idea that bathing in the Ganges River washes away sins. The irony is painful. The Ganges is one of the most polluted rivers in the world, filled with industrial waste, sewage, and even corpses. Yet millions of people step into it daily, convinced that dirty water can somehow purify them spiritually. The health risks are enormous. Skin infections, parasites, and waterborne diseases spread in the name of holiness. The belief turns a dangerous act into a sacred ritual. Then there's the practice of fasting or extreme asceticism to please gods. People starve themselves, walk on fire, or pierce their bodies, thinking pain or deprivation makes them spiritually pure. But all it does is harm the body and mind. It's a form of self-abuse dressed up as devotion. And tragically, children are often pulled into these practices too, suffering physically and psychologically. A widespread belief is that certain animals, plants, or objects hold magical powers. A snake is seen as sacred, a tree as divine, or a stone as an incarnation of a god. The result is that people pour milk on snake idols, tie threads around trees, or spend fortunes on stones blessed by priests. None of these acts change the real world. They simply drain time, energy, and money that could be spent on actual improvements in life. Belief in miracles tied to idols is another foolish idea. Stories of statues drinking milk, or tears falling from stone eyes, spread like wildfire. Yet every time they're investigated, they turn out to be natural phenomena, hoaxes, or simple illusions. But people cling to them anyway, desperate for proof of the supernatural. The willingness to abandon reason in favor of emotional excitement shows how strong these beliefs can grip a society. Even the concept of karma itself is problematic. While it sounds like a moral system, you reap what you sow, in reality, it punishes victims and excuses injustice. When someone is born poor, disabled, or sick, karma says it's because of their actions in a previous life. This creates a culture of blame instead of compassion. Instead of challenging unfair systems, people shrug and say it's destiny. It turns injustice into a divine plan. And then there are ritual offerings, pouring ghee, food, or money into fire as a sacrifice. The idea that burning resources somehow pleases a god is absurd. In a country where millions still lack basic needs, watching wealth go up in flames as part of a ritual ritual is tragic. It's a belief that values imaginary benefits over tangible human needs. Another strange belief is tied to temple wealth. Temples across India collect billions in donations from worshippers who are convinced that giving money to a god will bring blessings in return. Instead of funding schools, hospitals, or infrastructure, much of this wealth sits locked in vaults or is spent on gold-plating statues. This is a tragic waste of resources in a country that urgently needs investment in real solutions for poverty and inequality. Faith has turned generosity into a transaction with the divine, and people keep paying, even though nothing comes back but false hope. There's also the practice of ritual purity, the idea that touching the wrong person, eating the wrong food, or walking into the wrong place makes you spiritually polluted. This obsession creates pointless divisions between people. It enforces untouchability, food taboos, and segregation. The belief is not only irrational but harmful, as it strengthens discrimination and prejudice under the excuse of holiness. Cleanliness is important for health, but ritual purity has nothing to do with hygiene. It's about social control, not real well-being. Another belief is that certain chants or mantras hold supernatural power. The claim is that repeating sounds or words in Sanskrit can change your destiny, bring wealth, or heal disease. But words are just vibrations of air. They can inspire, they can comfort, but they cannot magically alter reality. Yet entire industries of gurus and spiritual leaders thrive on selling mantras, convincing people that repeating sounds will fix their problems. It's a distraction from addressing issues with reason, planning, and effort. Linked to this is the blind following of gurus, the belief that spiritual leaders are enlightened beings who must be obeyed without question. Time and again, scandals have revealed gurus exploiting their followers financially, emotionally, and sexually. Yet many continue to rise because the belief itself makes people vulnerable. Once someone is convinced that a guru is divine, they will hand over their autonomy. This is not wisdom, it's submission. Another foolish idea is the belief that suffering itself is holy, that enduring pain, poverty, or disease is a sign of spiritual strength or divine favor. This mindset has been used to glorify poverty and discourage people from seeking progress. It tells people that their struggles are noble rather than solvable. This keeps entire communities stuck, praising their hardships instead of demanding change. Then there's the reliance on omens and rituals to make decisions, whether it's starting a business only on auspicious days or refusing to travel when a cat crosses the road. These beliefs trap people in irrational fear. Life is uncertain enough without layering superstition on top of it. But for many, decisions big and small are still shaped by what priests declare to be lucky or unlucky. It's an invisible chain that limits freedom and growth. Another belief is that idols must be fed and cared for like living beings. Statues are dressed, bathed, and offered meals, as if they were hungry or tired. This might seem harmless, but it reveals how deep the illusion runs. People spend hours every day tending to stone figures while neglecting the very real hunger and suffering of actual humans just outside temple doors. The misplacement of empathy is staggering. There's also the notion of sacred geography. Certain hills, caves, or stones are believed to hold divine energy. Pilgrims travel long distances, sometimes at great personal cost, to touch a rock or climb a staircase, convinced it will bring salvation. In reality, the places themselves are no different from any other. The only thing that makes them special is collective belief, yet entire economies are built on these illusions. And of course, the obsession with miracles attributed to saints or gods. Stories of people healed instantly, disasters stopped by prayer, or statues saving villages from floods. These tales spread quickly but collapse under scrutiny. Real healing requires medicine, disasters require planning and science. Believing in divine intervention only delays the search for real solutions. Another belief that stands out is the fear of planetary curses, the idea that Saturn, Rahu, or Ketu can bring misfortune unless rituals are performed. Families spend fortunes on special ceremonies to neutralize planetary positions, believing that human fate is controlled by distant rocks in space. In reality, planets have no influence beyond gravity and light. Yet astrologers profit from this fear, selling expensive remedies like gemstones or rituals. It's a business built entirely on exploiting anxiety. Then there's the practice of animal sacrifice, which still exists in many parts of India despite being outlawed in some states. The belief is that killing goats, chickens, or even buffaloes can please a deity and bring prosperity. This not only causes needless suffering to animals but also normalizes violence in the name of religion. At its core, it's a primitive trade, blood for blessings, with no evidence of effectiveness. Another common idea is that touching the feet of elders or priests transfers spiritual energy. Respect for elders can be meaningful, but the belief that kneeling down gives you invisible blessings is simply superstition. Real respect comes through action, care and empathy, not through ritual gestures performed out of fear or obligation. The obsession with numerology is another irrational belief. Many avoid the number 13 or arrange weddings and business deals based on numerological charts. Numbers themselves have no mystical power. They're abstract human tools, yet people delay important life choices or waste money on consultants who assign magical meaning to digits. One more is the idea that menstrual blood makes women impure. This belief has led to centuries of exclusion, where women are barred from temples, kitchens, and even family gatherings during their periods. It's a natural biological process, yet religion turns it into a source of shame. The result is discrimination, silence, and harm to women's dignity. A belief rooted in ignorance of biology has shaped millions of lives with stigma. There's also the belief in destiny being written on the forehead, literally, seen in the practice of fortune tellers reading lines or marks to predict someone's future. Palmistry and forehead reading are treated as ancient sciences, but they're nothing more than storytelling. They rely on vague language and confirmation bias. People remember when predictions seem accurate and forget when they fail. Yet the belief persists, keeping people tied to false certainty instead of real planning. Another irrational idea is the treatment of birth and death as spiritually contagious. Families are often considered impure after a birth or death, requiring rituals and isolation. But what's actually happening is simple biology and grief. These events are powerful and emotional, but they don't pollute anyone. Yet the belief continues, adding unnecessary guilt and ritual burden during times when families need support and care. Finally, one of the most entrenched beliefs is that gods themselves need to be bribed with offerings. Fruits, flowers, sweets, gold, or cash are handed over with the expectation that divine beings will return the favor with blessings. It's the same logic as a corrupt official who only acts when paid. Instead of exposing how human these gods appear, the belief reinforces dependency. People give up their hard-earned resources to invisible forces while the real beneficiaries are temples and priests. When we step back, we see a pattern across all these beliefs. They thrive on fear, guilt, and the human craving for certainty. They provide comfort in the short term, but create harm in the long run. They waste resources, justify inequality, and distract people from real solutions. The tragedy is that these ideas are passed down generation after generation, often without question. The power of belief is not in its truth, but in its ability to control behavior. And when beliefs are irrational, that control comes at a cost. Wasted lives, wasted potential, and unnecessary suffering. Questioning them is not disrespect, it's a responsibility. Because every belief that survives unchallenged keeps people locked in illusions. What makes these beliefs so durable is not just tradition, but psychology. Human beings have a natural tendency to search for patterns, even where none exist. If something bad happens after a black cat crosses the road, the mind links the two. If someone recovers from an illness after chanting a mantra, the chant is credited instead of the body's immune system. This pattern-seeking instinct, once useful for survival, becomes a trap when applied to the mysteries of existence. There's also the role of fear of suffering, fear of death, fear of uncertainty. Religion offers simple answers to terrifying questions. If you believe in karma, suffering makes sense. If you believe in reincarnation, death is not final. If you believe in gods, you feel protected. These stories don't solve the real problems of life, but they ease the mind in the moment. That's why they endure. Social pressure keeps them alive too. Questioning holy cows, rituals, or astrology can lead to ridicule or even hostility. Families and communities enforce conformity. A child learns early that belief equals belonging. To doubt is to risk isolation. And so the cycle continues, with each generation passing on stories that no one dares to challenge openly. Economics also play a role. Entire industries are built on these beliefs. Priests, astrologers, gurus, and temple authorities profit from rituals, offerings, and pilgrimages. The system depends on keeping people convinced that their money and obedience buy divine favor. Breaking free from belief is not just a personal act. It threatens the livelihoods of those who exploit it. But the greatest reason these beliefs persist is that they promise meaning in a chaotic world. When life feels random, cruel, or unfair, people crave a story that makes sense of it. Even if the story is false, it gives comfort. Yet the cost of clinging to illusions is high. It keeps people from facing reality honestly and from building solutions grounded in truth. 17 foolish beliefs might sound like a list of quirks, but together they form a worldview that shapes how millions live and die. They decide who people marry, what jobs they can take, who they're allowed to touch, how they spend their money, and how they face suffering. When we see the scale of influence, it's clear that these are not harmless traditions. They are powerful illusions with real consequences. The problem with illusions is that they always collapse when tested. Cows are not sacred. Astrology doesn't work. Bathing in polluted rivers spreads disease, not purity. Idols do not eat or cry. Planets don't curse anyone. Karma doesn't explain injustice. Each of these claims, when stripped of fear and mysticism, falls apart under reason. What remains is the responsibility to stop pretending. Challenging these ideas is not about disrespecting culture. It's about respecting truth. It's about refusing to waste human potential on rituals that solve nothing, and refusing to excuse injustice by calling it divine. Every time someone steps back from superstition and chooses reason, a space opens for real progress. In health, in equality, in freedom. The task is not easy. Beliefs are comfortable, while truth is often uncomfortable. But comfort built on illusion is fragile, and sooner or later, reality intrudes. When children die from preventable diseases because families chose ritual over medicine, when women are excluded from life because of menstrual taboos, when violence erupts over cows or castes, the price of belief is revealed. The strength of humanity has always come from questioning, not obeying, from exploring, not submitting, from solving problems with evidence, not myths. The challenge is to carry that strength into every corner of life, even where tradition insists on obedience. Because at the end of the day, no god needs our money, no planet controls our fate, no stone idol drinks milk. What matters is what we do here, with each other, in the real world. And the sooner we let go of foolish beliefs, the sooner we can face life with clarity, honesty, and the courage to shape our own destiny.